Jeffrey Epstein and his powerful friends from around the world. What if the salacious stuff was not the most important stuff about Epstein? What is his involvement in the financial corruption of the world? And why does Bill Gates keep meeting him? Hello there, you 6.4 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage of mutual awakening. Together we can challenge their narratives. Together we can investigate facts that they would rather we left alone. Turn on the notification bell right now. It's the only way we can ensure you see our content. The algorithm will take you hither and thither in pursuit of propaganda and nonsense. We want to give you the beautiful truth that we may grow together. Today's conversation is fantastic. I spoke with Whitney Webb. You gotta love Whitney Webb. She lives inside her own grandma's handbag, talking about information that surely cannot make her feel safe when out alone or even when at home. In our conversation, she spoke at length about Jeffrey Epstein, his financial ties to numerous very important people within the CIA, and Bill Gates' long-term relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and what exactly that could be about. And how it's not just about salacious stuff, it's also, more importantly perhaps, about financial stuff. Stay to the end. Let me know in the chat and the comments what I should have asked, and stay to the very end. It's a great conversation.
I guess what I really want to know is this. If you're friends with Jeffrey Epstein, does that mean that you're definitely involved in nefarious activity related to trafficking, assault and abuse, that crazy island stuff? Does it mean you're necessarily involved in corruption? Does it?
So I think you have to keep in mind, Epstein is a guy that was also really involved, for example, in financial criminality. Suspect fundraisers and sort of this broader effort to redefine philanthropy, move it away from how it's been considered by the public for a long time as altruism to a new model where it's really impact investing disguised as philanthropy. It's all about return on investment. And that's why you have him so closely involved with the Clinton Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which are really institutions that were created in this period where that shift was happening, and Epstein was a key part of it. So more often than not, the people that tend to go to Epstein tend to be looking, I think, not necessarily so much for stuff, though there obviously are those cases. But I think the financial ties are very significant because even the people that were, discussed in this new Wall Street Journal expose, they admitted, we went to Epstein for his wealth and connections. It was about money. And this is a guy that if you look at his history from the time he was at Bear Stearns to the time he was involved with shadow finance and arms deals with people like Adnan Khashoggi and all these, suspect intelligence ties in that period, then going to very suspect Clinton White House fundraisers, visiting the Clinton White House 17 times, and being tied up with, the biggest campaign finance scandals of the Clinton administration, and then going on to get involved with philanthropy. I mean, there's a very particular reason you'd seek out someone like Epstein, in my opinion.
Right.
So,
So, like, the trafficking was almost like a side hustle. There's a lot of financial impropriety also. That trend, that's all of the ESG stuff. Is it ESGs? Like the way of categorizing blue chip companies so that they have social credit score type stuff going on, or ways of gaining additional credit through their ecological or sociological moves. That seems like a way of capitalizing literally on certain social justice ideas that are good. That's why they have a certain gravitas, but are not legitimate in these contexts. And the biggest example of that is these sort of phony philanthropy organizations that do appear to have connections with the Clintons and the Gates Foundation. I see. Can I just ask you this? This is more of a personal thing. Say someone like Noam Chomsky, who I really, really like, when he's meeting up with Epstein, is there any way of like meeting up with Jeffrey Epstein that is legit? Or is it, if you've met with Jeffrey Epstein or been on that airplane, it ain't a good look, full stop?
So the Chomsky situation is interesting. Well, it's also a little complicated because Chomsky himself hasn't been very forthcoming about why he would meet with Epstein. But actually, before these revelations in the Wall Street Journal, Epstein was very open before he died about why he was interested in someone like Noam Chomsky. He gave an interview in 2017 that was published later in Science magazine. And there he said that the reason he invited Chomsky to his townhouse was because he was interested in talking to Chomsky about artificial intelligence specifically. And this is, I would argue part of Epstein's big focus in MIT specifically, where Chomsky has long taught and been affiliated, and particularly with MIT artificial intelligence initiatives. So I think with Chomsky, a lot of it was apparently related to that. Now, the question is, How much did Chomsky really know, about Epstein? Because keep in mind, some of the meetings that he was known to have with Epstein weren't just with Epstein. They were with people like Ehud Barak, the former Israeli prime minister, who was very, very much involved, if you look at the evidence, with aspects of the sex trafficking operation. And then you also have him going on a dinner meeting, I guess, with Woody Allen and his wife. And of course, Woody Allen is very controversial for his alleged of Mia Farrow's adopted daughter. And then he ends up marrying another one of Mia Farrow's adopted children, allegedly getting involved with her when she's around 17 or 18. So there's a bunch of weird stuff there. I don't have the answers about Chomsky. I wish he would have given a less evasive response to the Wall Street Journal. He essentially told them that his meetings with Epstein were none of their business nor anybody's, which is not the kind of response I was personally hoping for from Chomsky. But he was very evasive and defensive in his response. So
I can see that I myself am not immune to the problem of it when it's someone that you're predisposed to like Chomsky or Woody Allen, people I think are contribute to the culture in various ways. Like I'm like, oh no, but when it's like Bill Gates, I'm like, aha. But you think that Bill Gates's connections are much more likely to be about setting up apparently philanthropic organizations that have great influence. It's very interesting to see those kind of ties, because I guess what it is Epstein is like an outlier of when people in spaces like this say, hey, there's all these sort of secret connections and there's all this corruption that goes on, financial, and there's a sexual component to it. Like Epstein is like someone that emerges that appears to have these things written down. That's kind of, I guess, what he represents. Is when you have such a deep knowledge of a figure like Epstein, what do you think his significance is? Why do you think he died in prison? Why did he have meetings with the CIA director, William Burns? So does he have deep state connections, big finance connections? What does he represent, Whitney?
Okay, so I wrote a 1,000-page book about Epstein and his deep state connections. They are very significant. They are very disturbing. And a lot of it essentially intersects with some of the things that are being promoted right now in terms of technocracy, artificial intelligence, digital ID, all sorts of these types of initiatives. Epstein was on that beat very early on, over a decade ago. And but even before that, he was involved with this power nexus, sometimes referred to as the enterprise, back in the Iran-Contra era, and essentially stayed affiliated with aspects of that throughout the years. And in my opinion, he was a serial financial criminal. And it's not quite clear exactly what the extent of his financial crimes are, but from what we do know, it is pretty significant. And I think this would go back to sort of, his earlier ties with Bear Stearns, and this where he was allegedly a bounty hunter for finance, hiding and finding looted money for powerful people. This is a guy that was an expert in the shadow banking system. And I think, after he did it in the 80s with these suspect arms deals, and then sort of offered similar services to the Clinton administration, he went on and started developing, offering those services to a host of powerful people, including Silicon Valley, for example, and all other sorts of powerful entities. And I think, frankly, the mainstream media has really done this story an injustice by focusing almost exclusively on and not on really any other aspects of Epstein and what he was doing, because there's really a lot more to find. And my work is a testament to that, but other people as well have dug up a lot on what he was involved with.
Do you believe the positioning of Epstein primarily around do you believe it's strategic, and what is most significant about the recent revelations, if I may just add?
Yeah, so I definitely think it's a strategic effort to limit the what is acceptable discourse about the Epstein case. And as far as the financial ties go, a great example going on right now is the J.P. Morgan Epstein case. So a lot of focus has been on these revelations in the Wall Street Journal. But what hasn't been talked about as much is that there's been 4 billionaires subpoenaed as part of this J.P. Morgan Epstein case, including Thomas Pritzker, who runs the Hyatt Hotels Corporation. And he is in Epstein's black book, written next to his name is numero uno, number 1. That's a pretty odd thing to have next to your name. And the Pritzkers are very much tied to the Democratic Party. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, where William Burns, who was Joe Biden's pick for CIA director that was meeting with Epstein, he met with Epstein right before he went from essentially being Hillary Clinton's deputy at the State Department to the Carnegie Endowment for Peace, which Penny Pritzker runs, who of course is related to Thomas Pritzker. And the Pritzkers, as I note in my book, are essentially this very powerful clan out of Chicago who were responsible in a large part for Obama's presidential and Senate career, and have historic ties to organized crime going way, way, way back to like the 30s and 40s, and all sorts of very suspect activity that helped essentially cement their position in Chicago politics, which is pretty notoriously corrupt if you're familiar with political history in that part of the country.
Is it potentially strategic to amplify the more salacious aspects of this case in order to distract from the fact that Epstein and the revelations that you have presented us with are the flying saucer on the White House lawn of deep state corruption?
Yeah, I think that's fair, because if you look at some of this information coming out, as particularly of the J.P. Morgan case, there's a lot of powerful people that are potentially on the hook for enabling his sex trafficking crimes, particularly Jamie Dimon, one of the most powerful bankers on Wall Street. So, I mean, that's hugely significant in and of itself. And again, some of the other people that have been subpoenaed as part of that case, the two co-founders of Google, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, and apparently Larry Page is so concerned about being served papers in this court case that he can't even be found. They've tried 5 different addresses and can't find him anywhere. And that's really astounding when you consider the ties of Google to the CIA from its founding, its collaboration with mass surveillance, and the fact that the New Albany Company, which was incorporated by Jeffrey Epstein, owns the land on which major data centers for Google, Amazon, and Facebook sit on. And no one's talking about that stuff, because at the same period of time that happened, Epstein was setting up this insane DNA data mining company that he called a biomedical Google. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, and he wanted to sequence the genes of all these young Virgin Islanders, and he started funding education initiatives for like little kids and teens. Very suspect when it's Epstein, right? Because he wanted them to basically run servers for this company for him, and he wanted to train them from an early age on. I mean, there's so much crazy stuff here, and as you start picking away at it, I think it becomes really clear why they're focusing so much on his crimes. And again, it's not just his crimes, as they occurred over the course of his lifetime and career. The mainstream media focus is specifically on crimes from 2000 to 2006. And there's no discussion of what Epstein, well, very little discussion of what Epstein was doing after he was arrested the first time, and what he was doing around the time he was arrested the second time. Because I think it's fair to say that the Department of Justice of the United States wasn't interested in justice for Epstein victims when they arrested him and, helped cover up his apparent murder in 2019.
Well, there you go. Do you feel just a little bit brighter? Do you feel you understand how global power operates a little more clearly? Tell me who else you'd like to see on our show and what else you'd like to see us talk about. We're on Rumble every day at these times. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. Remember, turn on the notification bell, but more important than any of that, please stay free.